The conference room at Henderson Technologies felt smaller than it should have been, despite the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle. I sat in the corner chair, the one closest to the door, while my brother Marcus commanded attention from the head of the table. 23 people filled the space, board members and senior executives, their expensive suits and practiced expressions creating an atmosphere of controlled importance. Before we begin the quarterly review, Marcus announced, adjusting his Patek Philippe watch with deliberate slowness, I'd like to address a personal matter that's been bothering me. My father, Gerald Henderson, sat 2 seats to Marcus's right, his silver hair perfectly styled, his custom suit immaculate. At 62 he still carried himself like the corporate titan he'd been before semi-retirement. He nodded encouragingly at Marcus, a small smile playing at his lips. My sister Emily decided to grace us with her presence today, Marcus continued, gesturing toward me with what might have looked like casual dismissal to anyone who didn't know him. I knew him. This was calculated. She's been asking questions about company operations, stock structures, things that are frankly beyond her comprehension. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Jonathan Price, the CFO who'd been with the company for 8 years, studied his tablet screen with sudden fascination. Margaret Chin, head of operations, found something interesting in her coffee cup. Marcus, I said quietly, keeping my voice level, I was simply trying to understand. That's exactly the problem, he interrupted, leaning forward with practiced intensity. You're trying to understand things you'll never understand. Real business. Strategic positioning. Market dynamics. He paused, letting each phrase land with weight. You work an entry-level administrative job at some nonprofit. You schedule meetings and order office supplies. That's not business, Emily. That's busy work. My mother, Patricia, sat beside Dad, her designer handbag placed just so on the table. She didn't defend me. She never did when Marcus was performing. Your brother has tripled company revenue in 3 years, Dad interjected, his voice carrying the boom of someone used to commanding rooms. He's expanded us into 4 new markets, secured partnerships with Fortune 500 companies, positioned us for an IPO that could make this family generationally wealthy beyond what I ever achieved. And you, Marcus said, his attention boring into me, you live in a studio apartment in Capitol Hill. You drive a 7-year-old Honda. You shop at Target. He said Target, the way some people might say landfill. So when you ask questions about equity structures and shareholder agreements, you'll forgive me for not taking you seriously. I'm just trying to learn, I said, my hands folded in my lap, my expression neutral. Years of family dinners had taught me that showing emotion only gave them ammunition. Learn. Marcus laughed and several executives joined in with polite chuckles. Emily, I have an MBA from Wharton. Dad built a $200 million company from nothing. You have a bachelor's degree in nonprofit management from a state school. These aren't the same things. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I ignored it. I think what Marcus is trying to say, Mom offered, her tone suggesting she was being diplomatic when she was actually twisting the knife, is that we're proud of your work with your little charity. Helping people is noble. But it's not the same as creating value, building enterprise, understanding markets. Her charity has 4 employees, Marcus added. I have 847. The scale isn't comparable. David Morrison, the lead investor who'd backed Henderson Technologies' Series C round, cleared his throat. Perhaps we should move to the agenda items. In a moment, David, Marcus said smoothly. I think it's important that everyone in this room understands the hierarchy here. Emily isn't on the board. She isn't a shareholder. She has no formal role in this company. She's here because she's family, and I'm trying to be generous by exposing her to what real business looks like. Though that generosity has limits, Dad added. We can't have someone who doesn't understand the fundamentals questioning strategic decisions. I wasn't questioning, I said softly. I asked about the shareholder distribution because you saw some paperwork you didn't understand, Marcus finished. Yes, Emily, companies have complex ownership structures. There are voting shares, non-voting shares, preferred shares, options pools. It's not something you can grasp from reading a few documents. Jennifer Wu, the company's general counsel, shifted in her seat. She'd been studying me with an odd expression for the past several minutes. Unlike the others, she didn't look uncomfortable. She looked curious. The shareholder structure is actually quite straightforward, Jennifer said carefully. Perhaps Emily has legitimate questions about. Jennifer, Marcus cut her off with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I appreciate your thoroughness, but I think I know my own sister's capabilities better than you do. She means well, but she's out of her depth. My phone vibrated again. Then again. Kept my hands still. You know what your problem is, Emily? Marcus stood now, pacing behind his chair like a professor delivering a lecture. You've never had to compete. You've never had to fight for market share, negotiate with vendors who smell weakness, manage teams that are looking for any sign you don't know what you're doing. You chose an easy path. A safe path. And now you're trying to understand a world you deliberately avoided. That's not fair, I said quietly. Fair. Dad's voice rose. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that Marcus works 80-hour weeks while you leave your office at 5? Is it fair that he's building something generational while you're satisfied with a paycheck that probably doesn't cover what we spend on wine in a month? Several people looked away. This wasn't a business meeting anymore. This was a family evisceration with an audience. I make $38,000 a year, I said, stating a fact, not complaining. Exactly, Marcus pounced. And I made $2.3 million last year. Do you understand the difference? That's not luck. That's capability. That's understanding business at a level you'll never reach. Marcus has a point, Mom said, her voice gentle in that particularly cutting way she'd perfected. You're 31 years old, Emily. Most people at your age in the business world are already senior managers, directors. You're still doing administrative work. We're not being cruel. We're being realistic. My phone was vibrating continuously now. Whoever was calling wasn't giving up. Answer your phone, Marcus said, checking his watch again. Probably someone calling about copier maintenance or something equally critical. I pulled out my phone. The screen showed 8 missed calls from Richard Ashford and 3 from Chin Wei. Both names would mean nothing to anyone in this room except Jennifer Wu, who'd gone very still, her eyes fixed on my phone screen from across the table. I should take this, I said quietly. Of course you should, Marcus said. Well, wait. I'm sure your emergency involves someone's travel reimbursement or a scheduling conflict for a meeting room. I stood and walked to the corner of the room by the windows. Richard Ashford's number appeared again. I answered. Ms. Henderson, Richard's British accent was crisp with urgency. I've been trying to reach you for 40 minutes. Chin Wei is on the line as well. We have a situation that requires immediate authorization. I'm in a meeting, I said quietly. I understand, but this can't wait. The Phoenix Holdings acquisition is moving forward ahead of schedule. The Singapore group is pressuring for a decision on the Henderson Technologies position. We need to know whether you want to proceed with the full sale of your stake or maintain majority control. Behind me, I could hear Marcus resuming his presentation about quarterly projections, his voice confident and commanding. How much time do I have? I asked. They want an answer within 2 hours. Given the current valuation at $268 million, your 67% stake represents approximately $180 million. But if Phoenix completes their acquisition first, your control position becomes significantly more valuable. Chin Wei calculates potential value at $340 million within 18 months if you maintain control and exercise certain options. I closed my eyes briefly. 18 months of planning was accelerating faster than anticipated. Ms. Henderson? Richard prompted. Schedule an emergency board call for 3 hours from now, I said. I'll need Chin Wei, the Phoenix Holdings team, and our legal counsel. Your brother's meeting will still be in progress, Richard noted. I know. Shall I send the standard NDA warnings to everyone who'll be present? Yes. And Richard? Send the full Henderson Technologies ownership documentation to Jennifer Wu at this address. She's going to need it in about 15 minutes. I ended the call and returned to my seat. Marcus was deep into a PowerPoint presentation about expansion into the Portland market, his laser pointer highlighting growth projections. Everything okay? He asked without pausing his presentation. Did they run out of sticky notes? A few people laughed. Everything's fine, I said. Good, Marcus continued. As I was saying, Portland represents a $47 million opportunity over 3 years. We've already secured preliminary contracts with 3 major clients, And our proposal for the Meyer Corporation contract is highly competitive. My phone buzzed with a text. Jennifer Wu had received the documentation. I watched her open the email on her tablet, watched her eyes widen slightly as she began reading. The Portland expansion will require approximately $8 million in initial capital, Marcus explained, which we'll source from our Series D round that closes next month. The valuation puts us at $268 million post-money, which positions us perfectly for the IPO we're targeting for next year. Jennifer was reading faster now, scrolling through page after page. She looked up at me once, her expression carefully neutral, then returned to the documents. Questions about Portland? Marcus asked the room. Several hands went up. He fielded them confidently, demonstrating the kind of command that had made him Dad's favorite since he was 12 years old. My phone buzzed again. A message from Jennifer. We need to talk. Now. I typed back. After the meeting. She replied, no. Now. Jennifer stood abruptly. Marcus, I apologize for interrupting, but I need to address something that's come to my attention. It's time sensitive and it involves company ownership structure. Marcus frowned. Jennifer, we can discuss internal matters after. This can't wait, she said firmly. The room went silent. Jennifer Wu didn't interrupt board meetings without cause. I've just received documentation that materially affects everything we're discussing. What documentation? Dad asked, his voice sharp. Jennifer looked directly at me. Hey, I nodded once. Emily Henderson, Jennifer said clearly, is not a casual observer at this meeting. According to the ownership documents I've just reviewed, certified by 3 separate law firms including Chinwei Associates in Singapore, Morrison & Partners in New York, and Ashford Legal Group in London, Emily owns 67% of Henderson Technologies. The room erupted. Marcus actually stepped backward, his laser pointer clattering to the table. Dad's face went through 3 different shades of red in rapid succession. Mom's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the sudden draining of color from her cheeks. That's impossible, Marcus said, his voice lacking its earlier confidence. I own 45% of this company. Dad owns 30%. The investors own the rest. You own 45% of voting Class A shares, Jennifer corrected, her lawyer voice precise and unemotional. Emily owns 67% of total equity through a combination of Class B shares, preferred shares and convertible instruments that were established through a series of strategic acquisitions over the past 4 years. 4 years. Dad stood now, his hands flat on the table. What acquisitions? I would know about. You wouldn't, Jennifer interrupted, because they were conducted through intermediary investment vehicles. Phoenix Holdings, Chinwei Capital, Ashford Ventures. All 3 entities purchased shares from early investors, employees who exercised options, and outside parties who acquired equity during the company's first 3 funding rounds. And these entities are. David Morrison had gone very pale. Wholly owned by Emily Henderson, Jennifer said. I've verified the documentation with all 3 law firms. The chain of ownership is clear, legal, and has been registered with the SEC for 18 months. Marcus sank into his chair. You're telling me my sister owns my company? I'm telling you, Jennifer said, pulling up documents on the main screen, that Emily owns 2/3 of Henderson Technologies and has owned it since before your Series C round. The numbers appeared on screen. Detailed cap tables, ownership percentages, acquisition dates. My name appeared repeatedly through the intermediary companies. The Series C round, David Morrison said slowly, understanding dawning. Phoenix Holdings was the lead investor. We thought they were a Singapore tech fund. They are, Jennifer confirmed. A Singapore tech fund wholly owned by Emily Henderson and managed by Chinwei, formerly a senior partner at Goldman Sachs Singapore. You've been lying to us for years? Mom's voice was shrill. I've never lied, I said calmly. I've never claimed to own nothing. You all assumed I owned nothing. You assumed my job at the nonprofit was all I did. You assumed I didn't understand business. Your entry-level job, Marcus started, is volunteer work, I finished. I don't take a salary. I founded the organization 6 years ago, funded it personally, and it now operates in 14 states with 83 employees, not 4. But none of you ever asked. Dad's face had moved past red into a concerning purple. If you own 67% of this company, then every decision we've made required my approval, Jennifer confirmed, which Emily provided through her designated representatives on the board. Phoenix Holdings has had 2 board seats for 18 months. You've been voting with them on every major decision. The IPO, Marcus whispered. If Emily owns 67%, then the IPO would make her current pre-money valuation is $268 million, David Morrison calculated out loud, his investor's brain automatically running numbers even in shock. Post-IPO we're projecting $800 million to $1.2 billion. 67% of $1 billion is $670 million, I said quietly. Give or take. The silence in the room was absolute. Through the windows, Seattle went about its business, oblivious to the bomb that had just detonated on the 43rd floor. Why? Marcus finally asked. His earlier confidence had completely evaporated. He looked young suddenly and lost. Why would you do this? Do what? I asked. Invest in a promising technology company? That's what good business people do, Marcus. They see opportunities and they capitalize on them. You let us think, Mom started. I let you think what you wanted to think, I said. I drive a 7-year-old Honda because I like my car. I live in Capitol Hill because I love my neighborhood. I shop at Target because it's convenient. None of those things have anything to do with my net worth. The nonprofit, Dad said, still processing. Your little charity has an annual budget of $47 million, I said. It's not little. It's just not something you ever bothered to learn about. Jennifer was advancing through more slides now, pulled from the documentation I'd had Richard send her. Emily's investment portfolio extends beyond Henderson Technologies. She has majority or significant stakes in 12 companies across tech, healthcare, and renewable energy. Her net worth, as of this morning's valuations, is approximately $890 million. Almost $1 billion, Marcus said numbly. And you let me, he continued, his voice rising, you let me stand here and lecture you about business? You let me mock your career, your income, your capabilities. Yes, I said simply. Why? Because I wanted to see how far you'd go, I said, my voice still calm. I wanted to see if anyone in this family would ever think to ask me about my life rather than assume they understood it. 4 years, Marcus. 4 years of family dinners where you talked about your deals, your successes, your brilliant strategies. 4 years where I asked questions and you treated them like a child asking about adult matters. You were humiliating us, Mom said, her voice sharp. No, I corrected. You were humiliating yourselves. I was just watching. My phone rang again. I checked the screen. I need to take this. It's Chin Wei. Wait, Dad commanded, using the voice that had made executives jump for decades. You can't just drop this bomb and leave. I can actually, I said, already standing. I own 67% of this company, which means I can do essentially whatever I want. But to address your concern, I'm not leaving. I'm taking a call about whether to sell my stake to Phoenix Holdings for $180 million or maintain control through the IPO. Sell? Marcus jerked upright. You can't sell. If Phoenix already owns your shares and they're buying more, then they'd own over 90% of the company, David Morrison finished. They could force a buyout of all remaining shareholders at their chosen price. Which would mean, Jennifer added, that everyone in this room with equity would be cashed out at Phoenix's valuation, not the IPO valuation. That's tens of millions of dollars in difference, Dad said, the calculation hitting him. Marcus's stake would be worth significantly less, I confirmed. About 60% less than the IPO scenario. But it would be clean, quick, and you'd all be out of the company within 6 months. You wouldn't, Marcus said, but uncertainty flooded his voice. I'm considering it, I said honestly. Phoenix Holdings has been pushing for full acquisition for 6 months. I've been resistant because I believed Henderson Technologies had strong leadership and significant growth potential. But this morning's meeting has given me doubts about the leadership assessment. Because we didn't know you owned the company? Mom demanded. That's vindictive. No, I said, because you demonstrated that you make assumptions without verification, that you value appearance over substance, and that you're willing to publicly humiliate someone you believe has no power. Those are concerning leadership qualities. I answered the phone. Chinwei, give me one moment. I muted it and looked at the room. I'm going to take this call in the executive office down the hall. It will last approximately 30 minutes. During that time, you might want to discuss how you'd like to proceed. Proceed with what? Dad asked. With your employment, I said simply. Marcus, you're the CEO, but I'm the majority shareholder. I have the right to replace you at any time for any reason. Dad, you're chairman of the board, but I control 67% of the votes. I can reconstitute the board with a single shareholder resolution. Mom, you're not employed by the company, so this doesn't affect you directly, but your family's financial future is very much on the table. You're threatening us, Marcus said. I'm informing you of the situation, I corrected. Whether it's a threat depends entirely on how you choose to interpret it and respond to it. I walked to the door, then paused. One more thing. When I come back from this call, I'm going to ask for your recommendation on whether I should sell to Phoenix or maintain control through the IPO. Your answer will tell me a lot about whether you understand business, Marcus. Whether any of you do. I left them there, their faces a mixture of shock, anger, and calculation. The executive office was empty, a small space with a desk and a chair and windows overlooking the city. I unmuted my phone. Chinwei, I'm sorry for the delay. No apology necessary, her crisp voice replied. Chinwei was 53, brilliant and utterly without patience for nonsense. I assumed the board meeting became interesting? You could say that. Richard and I have been modeling both scenarios. If you sell to Phoenix now, you walk away with $180 million liquid. Clean exit, no further involvement. If you maintain control through IPO, best case scenario puts you at $670 million in 18 months. But you remain entangled with your family's company and all the complications that entails. And if the IPO underperforms? Worst case realistic scenario still puts you at $380 million. The company fundamentals are sound despite your brother's theatrical management style. But Emily, this isn't really a financial question, is it? No, I admitted. This is about whether you want to punish them or prove something to them. And I'll tell you what I tell all my clients. Neither punishment nor proof should drive investment decisions. Then what should? What serves your interests? What moves you toward your goals? Your family's opinion of you should not be a factor in a $180 million decision. Through the office window, I could see Elliott Bay, ferries cutting white lines across blue water. Seattle spread out below, thousands of lives being lived by people who had no idea a woman in a corner office was deciding the financial fate of hundreds of employees and her entire family. The nonprofit could do a lot with $180 million, I said. It could, Chinwei agreed. You could expand to all 50 states, triple your impact, help tens of thousands more people. That's a valid consideration. Or I could maintain control, guide the company through IPO, potentially end up with much more money and much more ability to create change. Also valid. But I'd have to work with Marcus, with Dad, with a board that just watched them humiliate me. Yes. Though I suspect that particular dynamic would be considerably different going forward. I laughed despite myself. That's an understatement. What does your instinct tell you? I thought about Marcus's face when Jennifer revealed the ownership structure. About Dad's purple rage. About Mom's shock that her disappointing daughter wasn't disappointing at all, just disappointing to them. I think, I said slowly, that I want to see what they do in the next 30 minutes. Interesting choice, Chinwei said. I'll prepare documents for both scenarios. Call me when you decide. I ended the call and sat in the executive office chair, swiveling to face the window. My phone buzzed with text. Jennifer, they're arguing. Then, your father is demanding we verify everything. Then, Marcus is very quiet. That might be worse. 28 minutes later, I walked back to the conference room. The atmosphere had changed completely. Everyone sat in their seats, but the casual confidence from before had been replaced with something else. Calculation. Fear. Respect maybe, though I wasn't sure I wanted that from these people. Marcus stood when I entered. The gesture was unfamiliar, foreign. He'd never stood when I entered a room in his life. Emily, he said, his voice carefully controlled, we'd like to apologize. That's not what I asked for, I said, returning to my seat. I asked for your recommendation on the Phoenix sale. Don't sell, Marcus said immediately. The company is worth more in the IPO scenario. Significantly more. You'd be leaving hundreds of millions on the table. That's your professional opinion? I asked. Yes. And the fact that selling would cash you out at a significantly lower valuation has nothing to do with that opinion? He had the grace to wince. It's a factor, he admitted. I won't pretend it isn't. But it's also true. Henderson Technologies is positioned for explosive growth. The Portland expansion is just the beginning. We have Seattle, San Francisco, and Austin already producing strong revenue. Portland adds another major market. Then Denver, Phoenix, Chicago. Within 3 years, we could be the dominant player in our space. I noted. Interesting pronoun choice. You own the company, Marcus said. I'm the CEO you hired essentially, even if that hiring happened indirectly. And if I choose to unhire you? The room held its breath. Then I'd be disappointed, Marcus said, because I've spent 3 years building something I believe in. But I'd understand. I'd deserve it actually for how I spoke to you today. Gerald. I turned to my father. Your thoughts? Dad looked older than he had an hour ago. I think I've underestimated you, he said quietly. Badly. I think I've spent 31 years seeing what I expected to see rather than what was actually there. That's not a recommendation on the Phoenix sale, I pointed out. Don't sell, he said. Not because of me, not because of Marcus. Sell because Chinwei is right, you could do more good with more money. The IPO path gives you that. But it also gives me 2 more years dealing with this family in a business context, I said. It does, Dad acknowledged. And I can't promise that will be easy or pleasant. But I can promise that things will be different going forward. Different how? With you in your proper place, Dad said. As the owner. The ultimate authority. Not as the daughter we dismissed but as the businesswoman who outsmarted all of us. I turned to Jennifer. Legal opinion? The sale makes sense if you want a clean exit, Jennifer said. Maintaining control makes sense if you want to build something. Both are defensible choices. Though I'll note that Phoenix Holdings would likely replace the entire executive team if they take full control, so you'd be condemning everyone in this room to unemployment. Including yourself, I observed. Including myself, she agreed. Though I'd land on my feet. I'm more concerned about the 847 employees who aren't in this room, who had nothing to do with today's humiliation, who'd lose their jobs or face massive uncertainty under new ownership. That was the consideration that mattered. Not Marcus's stake, not Dad's pride, not even my own satisfaction at watching them sweat. 847 people, most of whom I'd never met, whose livelihoods depended on Henderson Technologies continuing to exist. I'm not selling to Phoenix, I said. Relief flooded the room like a physical thing. But, I continued, things are going to change. Marcus, you're good at your job. The growth numbers prove it. But you're going to have oversight now. Real oversight. Jennifer, I want monthly reports on all major decisions. David, your board seats stay, but I'm adding 3 more board members. People I trust. People who'll actually represent my interests. Understood, Marcus said quickly. Dad, you're stepping down as chairman. I'm taking that position. Dad opened his mouth, closed it, then nodded. That's fair. Mom. I looked at my mother, who'd been silent for the past half hour. You're not part of the company, so this doesn't affect you professionally. But personally, I think we need some space. I won't be coming to family dinners for a while. Emily, she started. I'm not angry, I said, which was true. I'm just tired. Tired of being treated like I'm less than. Tired of being dismissed. I have a life you never bothered to learn about, accomplishments you never thought to ask about, a career you mocked without understanding. That's exhausting. We'll do better, she said, and she might have even meant it. Maybe, I said. We'll see. I stood gathering my things. The meeting wasn't over, but my part in it was. Emily, Marcus said as I reached the door. Why didn't you tell us? Years ago when you first started buying shares. Why didn't you just say something? I considered the question. Because I wanted to see if you'd figure it out, I said finally. I wanted to see if any of you would notice that the Phoenix Holdings representative at board meetings looked exactly like the woman in my college graduation photos that still sit on Mom's piano. I wanted to see if Dad would recognize my investment strategy as identical to his own early career. I wanted to see if you, Marcus, would ever wonder where I got the money to donate $2 million to your company's charity foundation last year. You donated, Marcus stopped. The anonymous donor. Not that anonymous, I said. The paperwork had my signature. You just never looked. I left them there processing. Jennifer followed me into the hallway. That was impressive, she said. That was exhausting, I corrected. Fair. For what it's worth, I think you made the right call not selling. The company is solid. Marcus is actually good at his job when he's not being an arrogant ass. With proper oversight, Henderson Technologies could be something really special. I know, I said. That's why I bought it in the first place. My phone rang again. Richard Ashford, probably wanting to know the outcome. I need to update my team, I told Jennifer. Can you send me the board meeting minutes once they're finalized? Of course. Though I suspect these will be the strangest minutes I've ever written. Item 4. Emily Henderson revealed to own the company. Chaos ensued. I smiled despite myself. Keep it professional, Jennifer. Always do. I took the elevator down 43 floors, walked through the lobby where the security guard nodded at me the same way he had when I entered. Just another visitor, nothing special, and stepped out into Seattle afternoon sun. My phone showed text from Chinwei. Heard you're maintaining control. Good choice. Richard, board call still scheduled? A message from my assistant at the nonprofit. Reminder. Youth Center opening tomorrow at 10 a.m. Press will be there. The Youth Center. Right. The project I'd spent 2 years funding and planning, the one that would serve 500 kids in underserved neighborhoods. The one my family didn't know about because they'd never asked what my nonprofit actually did. I texted back, I'll be there. Then I walked to my 7-year-old Honda, which started reliably like it always did, and drove back to my studio apartment in Capitol Hill, which had exposed brick and great light and cost $1,800 a month, even though I could afford something 100 times more expensive. I could afford a lot of things. A bigger car. A bigger apartment. A different family. But I'd learned something my father and brother never understood. Having money and needing to prove you have money are two entirely different things. One is wealth. The other is insecurity. And I'd never been insecure about what I'd built. I'd only been disappointed that my family couldn't see it. Now they could. Whether they'd learn anything from it remained to be seen. My phone buzzed one final time. A text from Marcus. I'm sorry. Really. And not just because you own the company. Because I was cruel. Because I should have known better. Because you're my sister and I failed you. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, I know. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But acknowledgement. It was a start.